Two Worlds, One Family by Dragon Translator. Chapter 39. Shouldn't have done that. Toothless banked into a dive, landing beside Stormfly. The Nada bowed to Hiccup, then tilted her head upon seeing the orange terror. "New flock member?" she asked. The terror chittered. "I was asked to inform Alpha of the human youngling waking. Alpha and his brothers let me fly with them." The terror hopped off and bowed to Hiccup. "Thank you, Alpha and brothers to the Alpha." "You're welcome," Hiccup said, and Toothless and Sharpshot warbled and chittered. Hiccup dismounted. Astrid walked over from where she had been standing next to the door. She scratched Toothless's head and Sharpshot behind his horns, then took Hiccup's hand. Hiccup smiled, then tipped his head towards the door, and the fact that Shadowfire lay down next to the hut, but his mother was absent. Gothi requested Gita go in with her. Astrid said, not sure why. Before Hiccup could respond, the rest of the riders landed, and their riders dismounted. The door opened. Gothi walked out, the girl following her. Flemma and Gita walked after them. The girl's eyes widened. She moved around Gothi and pulled a dagger from her tunic. The dragon snarled. Astrid slid in front of Hiccup, her hand on her axe, but not drawing it. Hiccup blinked when Snotlout moved to his right side. Rough and Tough moved to stand next to Snotlout, their arms crossed over their chests. Fishlegs walked behind the twins and Snotlout. Hiccup watched him stop beside Toothless, who was standing upon his hind legs behind Hiccup. Movement from in front of him pulled Hiccup's focus back to the dagger-wielding teen. Gita grabbed the girl's wrist. The girl jerked, but Gita did not let go. "Easy," Hiccup said, moving slightly forward to the left so he could stare at the girl. He did not move around Astrid. He knew she stood between him and the teen due to her care for him. He would not disrespect her by getting close to the girl while the teen still held a dagger. "You're not in any danger," he told the girl. "Dragons!" "They are our friends," Hiccup said. "Our family. They won't hurt you. Please, put the dagger down." The girl hesitated, glancing around. She relaxed, lowering her arm. Gita pulled the dagger from her hand and gave it to Flemma. Gothi moved around the girl. The elder smacked the girl's shoulder lightly with her staff before using it to etch runes into the dirt. Hiccup looked down. "She will be okay now?" Hiccup asked, clarifying what Gothi wrote. Gothi nodded. She tilted her head and then wrote some more runes. Hiccup read them and frowned. He heard Astrid hiss softly and glanced at her. His intended stared at the teen, eyes narrowed. Hiccup looked back to the elder and tipped his head, letting her know he got her warning. Gothi nodded her head once. Stormfly moved down, but Gothi shook her head and etched some more runes. "She's going to the Great Hall, and will walk," Hiccup said, looking at Stormfly. Stormfly chittered. Gothi ambled out of the farm and across the connecting bridge. Hiccup made sure the elder made it to the other side before turning back to the girl. His eyebrow lifted. Now that the danger looked to be gone, Snotlout, Tough, and Fishleg seemed to be struck silly. Each teen held a water vessel to the girl, and tried to keep the others from reaching her. Hiccup glanced at Astrid, not understanding the fuss. He blinked. Astrid's jaw was tight. She looked over at him. He gestured to the three boys and lifted an eyebrow in question. He then blinked when Astrid's face cleared. She smiled and moved around him, taking his left hand once more. Gita grunted. "Give her space, boys," she said, giving the three each a stern look. The boys grumbled but stepped back. Hiccup tipped his head to the mage and then turned his gaze to the girl. She looked at him, but her eyes shifted to the dragons. "How are you not scared?" she asked. Snotlout grinned. "True warriors don't get scared," he said. "Besides, all of these were well trained by yours truly." Hookfang snorted and struck the back of Snotlout's knees with the tip of his tail. Snotlout dropped to the grass, his helmet falling over his eyes. The dragons chortled. Snotlout jumped up, straightening his helmet. "I meant for him to do that." Hiccup caught Astrid's eye roll with the corner of his eye. He kept his face neutral, even though he wanted to smile. "Hi," Hiccup said, looking at the girl. "I'm Hiccup. What's your name?" "Heather." Hiccup frowned and tilted his head. "Do you know how you ended up unconscious in a boat?" "Pirates," Heather whispered. They attacked my parents' ship. Dad put me in the small boat we used for ferrying things." I don't know how I ended up unconscious. Hiccup's gaze flickered over Heather's shoulder. Gyda frowned and subtly shook her head. Hiccup focused back on Heather. If we fly you out, can you show us the general area the attack took place? He asked. Any battle or attack, no matter how small, would have left debris even if ships sank beneath the waves. If they could find the area, they could verify Heather's story. Hiccup's gut screamed at him not to trust the teen. Gyda's unsettled look and words yesterday, and Gothi's runes to warn him of odd questions Heather asked her and Flemmer about him upon awaking, notwithstanding. It seemed 15 years of ridicule and neglect can be used for something. Fly? Heather asked in a small voice. We fly with the dragons, Hiccup answered. Heather blinked, looking at the dragons once more. You've tamed them? Hiccup resisted the urge to glower. He hated that word. It reduced the dragons to nothing more than animals. However, Heather would not know the dragons could speak, feel, and had a culture all their own. We befriended them, Hiccup instead said. Don't fear. We are all experienced riders, and the dragons will not hurt or drop you. Heather looked at the dragons again, rubbed one hand over her other arm, and finally nodded her head. Hiccup tipped his head toward Gyda. You can ride with Gyda on Shadowfire. He has the size to comfortably sit 2 riders. Hiccup heard Fishleg shift and heard Meatlug coo softly. Belch rubbed his head against Tuff, and Hookfang nudged Snotlout under the guise of nuzzling against him. None of the teen boys said anything, and Hiccup was grateful. He did not want their contradictions right now. Propriety demanded Heather ride with another female. Barf, being attached to Belch, would make that difficult, and Hiccup could tell Astrid did not want to have Heather riding upon Stormfly. While Astrid would gladly strike those who harmed Heather, Hiccup knew his intended would not be happy that Heather pulled a dagger on those who helped her. Gyda's words yesterday and Gothi's runes today would mean Astrid was wary of Heather anyway. Hiccup glanced at Ruff to find her glancing between Heather and Astrid. He had wondered why Barf did not seem to stop his rider, but Hiccup saw Ruff's eyes were narrowed when looking at Heather. It seemed Ruff had her own reservations about the new girl. Gyda tapped Heather's shoulder. Heather turned. Gyda gestured to her son, who laid down so his entire underside touched the ground. Heather looked at Hiccup one last time. Hiccup felt Astrid tense and shifted his grip on her hand enough that he could rub one of her knuckles with his thumb. A peculiar expression crossed Heather's face, but she turned. Gyda pointed to Shadowfire's foreleg and murmured something Hiccup did not catch. Heather nodded her head and moved to Shadowfire. She gingerly clambered onto his foreleg. Shadowfire shifted his neck. Heather gripped the saddle and climbed into it. Gyda walked over, hopped onto her son's foreleg, and slipped into the saddle behind Heather. She reached around, tapping the handles. Heather grabbed them. Gyda fastened a tether line from the harness the tribe's tailor had fashioned for her to hook onto Shadowfire's saddle up near the handles. She then placed both hands upon Heather's shoulders. Hiccup tipped his head. Gyda would keep an eye on Heather, and Hiccup did not wish to be in the teen's boots should she try anything. Gyda might carry a dagger on her belt, but her bare hands were deadlier than the small blade. "Riders!" Hiccup called. "Mount up!" Astrid squeezed his hand before moving to climb into Stormfly's saddle. Hookfang lowered his neck, and Snotlout slung a leg over the saddle. Fitchlegs clambered up Meatleg's saddle. Barf and Belch each picked up the opposite twin and deposited them into their proper saddles. Hiccup grinned at the Zippleback for that and slipped onto his Toothless's back. The orange terror chirped. Hiccup turned to him. "Thank you," he said. "We'll take it from here." The terror bowed. "As you wish, Alpha. Is it okay if I explore where the humans of the nest reside?" Hiccup nodded, and the terror flared his wings. The small dragon rose and banked back towards Berg. Hiccup saw the questioning look upon Heather's face, but ignored it. He would train and teach anyone about the dragons, but he was not about to reveal every secret he held. Had he blabbed every detail of his life, his mangler would have been destroyed by his father, and Toothless would have been killed long before Hiccup could make the first tail fin for the dragon. Hiccup tapped the side of Toothless's neck. The Night Fury's wings flared, a motion mimicked by the others. They rose into the air, hovering well over the trees on Flemmer's farm. "Where to, Heather?" Hiccup asked. Heather slowly scanned the ocean. "East," she said, "and south." Hiccup nodded. At least that part rang true. Snotlout did say he found her boat east of Berg. Hiccup did not miss the fact that east and south also led to Outcast Island. He glanced at Heather now, wondering if this was a ruse by Alvin. Gyda did say the Outcast Chief wanted him. What better way than to send a person who needed his help? End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Okay, so they're a lot more wary of Heather, and I like how Roth is even picking up on the tension. Unlike how how Heather keeps glancing at Hiccup and Astrid and Roth are both onto her, and that he's holding Astrid's hand the whole time after she lowers her axe. It's just like, nah, girl, you don't have a chance here. And I like that he's like, wait, that's the way to Outcast Island. Alvin? It shows he's using his brain more than he did in the show. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.